Thank you for watching. My name is Glen Morgan, and this is We the Govern. Today, we're going to be interviewing one of Washington State's top attorneys, Joel Ard, and we have a great subject to cover today on an initiative that everybody should know about if you live in Washington State. So Joel, listen, it's great to have you in the studio again here. And just for our audience sake, in case they want to learn more about you, your law firm is Ard Law Group. And to find your website, they just go to ard.law. So it's a super easy, ard.law for those who have Common Core education. That's how you'd find Joel's website if you want to know more. And tell our listeners about this latest initiative that it sounds like is going to be quite interesting, quite an impact in Washington State. And it's Initiative 1422 about presidential electors.
Yes, it sounds like kind of a dry topic, presidential electoral allocation, but
Right.
It's actually really significant. So there are two states in the union that don't allocate presidential electors on a winner-take-all basis. Mm-hmm. So there's always talk every 4 years, how do you get to the magic 271? You know, there's 535 votes or 538 votes in the Electoral College, and you have to get a majority of those to get a win. And usually they talk about how, well, you know, Washington has X number of electoral votes and California has X number of electoral votes. They don't say that about Maine and Nebraska. Maine and Nebraska for a long time have had what I think is a better system of allocating their Electoral College votes. Mm-hmm. If you win statewide in Maine, you get 2 votes, and that basically accounts for the 2 senators, because that's how every state gets its Electoral College allocation, is you get 1 for each senator and 1 for each House member. Mm-hmm. So if you win statewide in Maine or Nebraska, you get those 2 for the statewide win. But then they tally up which presidential candidate got a majority in each individual congressional district. And each individual congressional district gets that Electoral College vote. So typically, Nebraska has mostly Republican electors, but there's one district in Nebraska that trends Democratic and usually sends 1 Democratic vote to the Electoral College. Maine's the same way, that it typically splits its Electoral College votes. We can do the same. We have a number of elected congressional Republicans. I think it's safe to assume that a district that elects a Republican to Congress probably also votes for a Republican presidential candidate. And so instead of seeing those votes wasted because the west side of the state dominates in numbers and votes overwhelmingly for Democrats, people in a district that elect a Republican to Congress and vote for a Republican for president would see their vote turn into an Electoral College vote.
For the president.
For the president.
And so the effective difference would be in the 2020 election, for example, then, or 2016, same way. Mm-hmm. All the Electoral College votes went to the Democrat candidate. It's been that way for I think
quite a long time.
Since Reagan, if I remember right. So it's
Yes.
been quite a while. So so what you're saying is the difference, if this initiative were to pass, then what this would mean is that you'd have more of a divided. Like, what would that actually look like from the 2020 election, for example?
I didn't exactly run the numbers on every district, but you do see that we sent 3 Republicans to Congress.
Right.
So let's assume that those 3 districts are also voted for Republicans for president.
Sure.
That would have been a net change of 6 Electoral College votes away from a Democrat candidate and to a Republican candidate, because it's a zero-sum game. There's only 538 total votes, so it would have been -3 in the D column, +3 in the R column.
Okay.
Frankly, I think the effects will be more profound than that. So this is an initiative to the 2022 legislature.
Right.
Hopefully will appear on the November 2022 ballot. Mm-hmm. That alone, I think, will drive a huge amount of turnout and, frankly, national interest in what we have going on here in Washington State.
It would change. It would definitely change the way national groups certainly look at certainly the presidential election in Washington State.
They'd actually have to campaign here.
Right.
Right. As it stands, as you pointed out, since Reagan, it's been a majority of one sort or another going to a Democrat candidate, and there's very little national interest in competing for votes here in Washington State. That would have to change.
And I know the person that sponsored this is Mike McKee, good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, just always out there fighting the good fight with Restore Washington. Mm-hmm. And if people want to learn more, they can go to WashingtonPetitions.com. What are the other questions that you typically see around this area? Because I know that the Electoral College, and when I used to work at the Freedom Foundation, right, they had a Save Our Electoral College group in Save Our States, I think was a group, the division that the Freedom Foundation had at the time. But what are the other arguments the pros and cons kind of against this that you hear out there?
Well, let me take a step back from this particular initiative in the Maine Nebraska model. There's another way that a lot of states, including the Washington legislature, have proposed to allocate electoral college votes. And they call it the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact,
right,
where our votes really wouldn't matter. You tally up the total popular vote across the entire country, and then we would be obliged to allocate our electoral college votes to whatever candidate won the popular vote nationwide.
Right.
I think first of all, I think it's unconstitutional as an interstate compact. But I think it's a terrible idea. I think it would really if every state managed to do that, or the majority of states, so that came into effect, that would really put attention on major urban TV markets as where you go for votes.
Right.
We don't get much attention now, we'd get even less. And that's currently on the books in Washington. It's something that will take effect if enough other states pass it. This initiative would repeal that and say, hey, we have a better way to do an approximate popular vote. And it's an approximate popular vote within the state.
Okay.
If you win the vote in the 8th Congressional District, you get an electoral college vote on either side. So I think one of the very few con arguments I heard was someone said, well, what if the Democrats get wind of this and do it in another state that's mostly Republican? I can't worry about what the Democrats might do in another state. I'd like to improve the way we're doing things here in Washington state, and I think this would be a huge improvement.
All right. So anything else you'd want our listeners to know about Initiative 1422?
Well, it sounds boring. The title's boring. It's not one of those initiatives that you can put a sexy title on and scream and yell about how it's going to change the world. I think it will make a really big change here in Washington state. It's very much under the radar right now, and I would just encourage listeners to go to WashingtonPetitions.com. There's a link there to get a PDF and print them yourself. Mike will have petitions mailed to you. Get them out, get them signed. Even if you live in a congressional district that's overwhelmingly Democratic, get them out and get them signed, because I think it will make a huge difference to how much attention gets paid to us in national elections. I think it'll drive turnout in presidential years.
Sure.
I think it's just going to be a huge improvement.
Well, it would definitely put Washington on the map in a different way than I think people are oftentimes thinking about right now. And I think that makes it interesting. And it's funny how this has just received zero attention out there in the media, which is, of course, why you're here today and why we're talking about it today. So I just want to point out to our listeners, if you want to learn more, please make sure you go to WashingtonPetitions.com. If you want to learn more about what we do at We the Governed, please go to my website at WeTheGoverned.com. And remember, there's always things happening out there in the political process all around us all the time that are oftentimes ignored by media, and we try to make sure we cover them with stories like this. And remember, I close every video with these words: the future belongs to those who show up. So please make sure that you show up. And Joel, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for letting me talk about this.